Brazen.
Just a quick note before we get started. This episode contains references to sexual violence and animal cruelty.
Rosemont Police is Angelo, he's with FBI, so I'm sure you had a bunch of questions for us like you were trying to ask me earlier. I want to get into it then.
In December 2017, 3 years after the chlorine gas attack, Robert Sichkowski, the Confederate fursuiter, turns up at the Hyatt Regency in Rosemont. He's in town once again for Midwest Fur Fest. By this point, the investigation into the case seems like it's stalled. As we've discovered, the FBI and police were working behind the scenes, but making little meaningful progress.
With that said, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can will be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have been present with you while you're being questioned.
Let's remind ourselves about Sichkowski. He's Patch's lead suspect for the gas attack, who came to his attention once he appeared in the infamous Confederate fursuit. From the FOIA documents, we know the FBI were tipped off to him immediately after the attack, and went up and interviewed Sichkowski at his home within days. We know he didn't let them search his house or car at first, waiting until they returned a few hours later before giving consent. We know the FBI went back and interviewed him again in 2015, and again came back empty-handed. Now here he is at the Hyatt again, without a ticket, drunk, wearing a red, white and black von Hindenburg-themed wolf fursuit, complete with spiked helmet, and doing a German accent. A furry called Puka is live streaming when it goes down.
Look at this dude trying to get away from con security. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, but he's getting crazy.
When confronted, Sichkowski makes a run for it, barging his way out to the street and shoving a woman out of the way as he does so.
He's fighting them out. There he goes, he's running. He's running. He's running.
Police are called, who find him lying in the middle of the road. He's arrested, handcuffed, charged with trespass and battery, and taken to the Rosemont police station. And then questioned.
I just want to mention, so today's December 2nd, 2017. It's currently 16:32 hours and 4:32.
The interview room is small and bare, with whitewashed breeze block walls. Sichkowski is sitting on a steel bench facing the camera in a sky blue prison uniform. His hair is long, below the shoulders, lank and dyed blonde. He looks like the aging guitarist of an 80s rock band.
So I'm sure you had a bunch of questions for us like you were trying to ask me earlier. I want to get into it then. You got questions for us, we have questions for you. But in order for us to talk to you, we have to read you around the rights. Okay, you are at a police station.
The footage is grainy. An interrogation in a police cell. The guy speaking is Sean Rose, a sergeant with Rosemont PD. And also in the room is an FBI agent, Angelo DeFeo. One thing to note, by the way, Sichkowski also goes by the pseudonym Magnus Diridian. He uses the two essentially interchangeably. Lots of people, especially in the fandom, know him by Magnus. So keep in mind, anytime you hear Magnus, that's also Sichkowski. I'm going to stick with Sichkowski in the script at least, for clarity's sake.
So tell me what happened. Why are you here today?
Back in the police station, Sergeant Rose is trying to figure out what happened.
I felt like I was being and getting attacked. So I just basically moved against him, trying to get through somehow.
Sichkowski claims people were grabbing him, that security wouldn't let him go, that he was being held against his will.
I was just trying to get out of there. I wanted to leave. They were holding me there against my will. We're not cops.
After about 10 minutes of back and forth between Rose and Sichkowski, Agent DeFeo leans forward. This arrest is not why he's here.
So, just real quick, like Sean mentioned, I'm with the FBI, so what happened last night is nothing I'm going to talk to you about. Okay, so that is not...
At this, Siczkowski looks down, blinking nervously. He's clearly uncomfortable, although in fairness, I would be too. DeFeo says he's here to talk about what happened in 2014.
Alright, so the reason that I wanted to come talk to you today is obviously the gas incident that happened a few years back is still an open investigation. So that's what we're doing. And you know, Sean's talked about it in the past.
This interview is tantalizingly referenced in one of the FOIA docs. We'd given up on seeing it because the document also says Rosemont PD destroyed the tape in April 2019. We'll get back to that. But we've gotten hold of a copy. This tape has never been made public before.
Sean's talked to you about it in the past, and we've been working on the case for a long time now. It's been 3 years. And for whatever reason, the common denominator happens to be you. Your name keeps coming up for some reason. And we want to know, and honestly, I mean, it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. It's just that at the end of the day, we talk to a lot of different people. I mean, the Phantom's a very big place. We talk to as many people as we possibly can, and names get thrown out, different things get thrown out. But for whatever reason, Magnus keeps coming up. And we want to figure out why.
From Brazen, this is Fur Loathing. I'm Nicky Wolf. Episode 5. Magnus.
The old school furry fandom is a pretty select group. You've got some names where it's like, wow, I heard about that guy, in the 1990s, before there was even social media.
Patch again.
I've been around that long. I've been paying attention to furries since the late 90s, even though I was pretty much a lurker. Robert Siczkowski, Magnus Diridian, goes back that far.
One of the documents in our FOIA trove was a 2016 report from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, which was called in to advise on the case. They outlined for investigators the likely profile of the possible perpetrator, given the details of the crime. They said that whoever set off the chlorine device would likely have an extensive criminal record, that it was likely an offender with a specific grievance, because the attack was vengeful and perhaps personal, that whoever did it had most likely attended previous MWFF conventions, resulting in a familiarity with the festivities in the hotel. The profile implied an offender with a history of failed interpersonal relationships, a difficulty trusting others, and a rejection of authority. On the first point, someone with a criminal record, Siczkowski certainly fits.
This guy has a long crime record. This guy has a crime record that started in 1990. He would have been 18 years old, and this is a long crime record, a lot of crimes.
A lot of crimes.
Let's see, we've got disorderly conduct, prowling at night, harassment, terroristic threats, ethnic intimidation, reckless endangerment, cruelty to animals, possessing instruments of crime with intent, theft, receiving stolen property, fighting, and all the way up to 2016, a battery charge.
But there's a massive kicker here, because it turns out Siczkowski had been prosecuted before for something that sounds extremely relevant to our investigation.
And this is something that should raise anybody's ears. He was charged for a gas attack, a chemical gas attack on a bank.
In the late 90s, Siczkowski went to his bank.
Yeah, so he was supposedly upset with the bank for charging him an overdraft fee or a series of overdraft fees. And he walked up to the teller. He made a sham transaction and he left this. It's described as a smoke bomb, a stink bomb, a couple of other things, but some sort of makeshift device in the bank.
Researcher Arnav again.
He went back home. The police came to his home and they arrested him a few hours later, sometime directly after.
It's worth saying this wasn't necessarily as minor as stink bomb makes it sound. A pregnant woman caught in it was hospitalized.
And then we found court documents about this specific case that showed that Szyszkowski was initially charged with terroristic threats charges. There's 2 of those, as well as harassment, reckless endangerment, and disorderly conduct. Some of those charges were later withdrawn. He wasn't actually convicted of the terroristic threats charges.
Stink bomb specifics notwithstanding, this, obviously, is major. The police eventually dropped the other charges in exchange for a guilty plea on disorderly conduct, and he served jail time. Our psychological profile on Szyszkowski is growing. We contact dozens of sources who are close to him, and after, in some cases, lengthy negotiation, 7 are willing to answer our questions. The stink bomb gas approach, is that, part of his MO? Is that did that often enough for it to be an MO?
Well, the stink bomb at the bank was not, that was right in the open.
This is someone who knew Szyszkowski when he was younger, and they say that the bank was not the only time he did this.
The stink bombs he used to do at his workplace. I know he used to go to the mall and toss them off the balcony at the mall. And yeah, that's pretty much his thing, is to do things from afar, do things late at night, do things that he can't get caught for.
Over the course of these conversations, several major themes come up over and over. 4 people mention Szyszkowski's tendency to bear a grudge or seek revenge on people who he perceives to have wronged him. In fact, 3 of them agree to speak to us only on the condition that their identities are protected, explicitly because they fear reprisals from Szyszkowski. Their voices will be disguised or read by actors.
Don't mention my name in your story or anything like that. I don't need another fire.
Szyszkowski denies these allegations.
He's one of these idiots that think if they're slighted in the least that they need to take revenge on people. So that was always his thing. Revenge. If you do this article or whatever you're doing, you should probably keep tabs too, because you'll be on the hit list also.
This source says Szyszkowski's alleged enemies might experience a mysterious fire in the night, or have their cars vandalized.
Tires, windows smashed, shit like that.
Bear in mind, while these testimonies are from sources we trust, they are making them anonymously and their allegations are mostly unverified. This is hearsay. Treat with skepticism. But some claims we are able to substantiate. They're confirmed either by criminal charges against Szyszkowski, or in the FOIA documents, or elsewhere. I'll note those when they come up.
I'm sure if he thought I slighted him in some way, I'm gonna be on his list. I don't want to be on his list, you know what I mean? I know what he's capable of.
This next source is also someone who'd been very close to Szyszkowski. Were there other kind of violent signs and indications?
So he was in jail, which I'm sure you'll see if you pulled his records, for shooting a dog with a crossbow.
Szyszkowski was convicted of animal cruelty in 1993.
The reason he did that was because when he was in school, kids were making fun of him, bullying him. But when he grew up, he went back, and the dog that he killed belonged to the kid that made fun of him.
The FBI documents show that they had looked into similar things, such as a witness said they saw Szyszkowski pick a cat up by its tail and swing it around. Again, bear in mind these are unverified claims from an anonymous source. But some disturbing patterns are emerging across these testimonies. Patterns that are hard to ignore. Several people describe a problematic relationship with alcohol. One, who dated Szyszkowski for a few months, said that they'd felt lured in and now regretted ever knowing him. The relationship ended, they said, because of his constant drinking, and because he'd threatened to kill the source's cat because it wouldn't stop staring at him. Another source describes meeting Szyszkowski in a furry Facebook group after posting about looking for a place to live. At first, they said he seemed respectful, but then, after they became uneasy and changed their mind,
his personality switched, saying things like, "Bitches always string me along and are deceitful." I told him I wasn't trying to string him along. If I don't have money, I don't have money. So he said something along the lines of, "When you move in, I will fuck you. You will blow me whether you like it or not for stringing me along." After he threatened to rape me, I basically shut down and told him I wasn't coming and blocked him. I was pretty scared of bumping into him at cons or him cyber-stalking.
When the coverage of the chlorine attack hit the news, the source who knew Szychkowski when he was younger says,
I knew as soon as they said it that it was him. I knew it right off the bat. As soon as I heard that, I knew it. That's his MO 100%.
This claim that gas attacks are part of his modus operandi, not just one isolated incident, is actually substantiated by Szychkowski himself. In a LiveJournal post from 2005, just after he got out of jail for the attack, he says he had, quote, carried ordinary stink bombs with me for years and used them as practical jokes or when someone irritated me enough or I felt it was warranted to bust one. It almost reads like he's giving advice here. There is no smoke, he writes, no noise except the crunch that a small glass vial might make, so if you cough when you step on it, you should not be heard. He goes on to describe the arrest and some of the people he met in jail. But what catches my eye is a comment underneath from a friend replying to his post. "Frankly, you deserved it. You don't seem to think out the consequences of your actions," the friend says. Szychkowski's reply is cryptic and intense. Quote, "A lot of us don't think out the consequences of our actions, apparently," Szychkowski snaps back. "And believe me when I say that any future problems I come across, I am going to deal with them in the manner that will eliminate them permanently." And then, in all caps, "I have no choice but to do this." We'll be back after this. We're back with the police interview of Robert Szychkowski in 2017. This interview is the last time Szychkowski interacts with investigators that we know of.
Somebody else asked that question. Well, what's making you nervous about this whole starting this up? Because I have a past criminal record going back years. I've been in and out of jail. It's like we're smart enough to look past that. I don't want to go through that again. It's like when you go to sleep and you have dreams about me.
It's hard to hear in this interview because the quality of the tape is so low. But they start asking Szychkowski why he's so nervous. He stammers, but says it's because he has a past criminal record and this is all dredging up latent anxiety for him.
I got what they call, I think it's post-traumatic stress. I mean, I'm very stressed out about bad things happening again and again and again.
Szychkowski served in the military, and the FBI documents do mention he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder.
I mean, I'm very stressed out about bad things happening again and again and again. And they do so. And that's why I want to move past, because that's what we're talking to. And then when the gas attack thing gets brought in, it's like, oh, man. Yeah.
Szychkowski says he wishes they would catch the person who did this, so they'd leave him alone. He says he keeps trying to think if he knows anything about the crime, and the interviewers start to seize on that.
Here's the thing, bro. We want to put you behind this as well. Like, we want you to be done with this whole thing and move on. So if you have any information about it, that's why we're asking you. Like, we just want to know. So here's what happens. You can provide us with information or names or someone that may...
The officers say this whole chapter can be closed if he can help shed any light on who could have attacked Midwest Fur Fest. Szychkowski tells Rose and DeFeo he'd been with his roommates at the time of the attack. Specifically, that he was in a hotel room with a friend, eating Chinese food and drinking when the attack took place.
Where were you when it happened? I was in my room with you, and we were talking for a while, and you heard a fire alarm go off, and I said, maybe someone pulled a fire alarm right out there, and it was, let's go outside. Why did you go to your room again? I was inside, I was having Chinese food up there. I remember. So why did you go there?
He seems aware that his story is shaky, and DeFeo and Rose know it too. We know this because we've gotten another big lead. We tracked down someone who roomed with Szychkowski at MFF the year of the attack. They also ask us to conceal their identity, again because they're worried about getting onto his radar. But they give us a detailed account of Suchkowski's behavior the weekend of the 2014 attack. They say he'd been drinking heavily throughout the convention from a jug of vodka he kept in the room. By far the most important thing this source tells us, though, is that Suchkowski wasn't with them for a specific period, the time frame around the chlorine bomb going off. Quote, "Before and after, I had no idea what Magnus was doing," the source tells us. "Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to say, oh, he was with me the whole time, I do not know what he was up to." We know from the FOIA documents that the FBI also know Suchkowski's alibi doesn't stand up, that he wasn't with the people he claimed to be with when the chlorine was released. Instead, they try to turn up the heat in a more general way.
So my next question would be, you guys got a lot of resources, and one of those things is a polygraph machine, right? Not in this one court, but something we use. I'm just asking you, would you consent to doing a polygraph related to knowing, having any prior or knowledge afterwards of this timeline? I know.
They ask Suchkowski if he'd be willing to take a polygraph test, and he becomes visibly more nervous. He says he'd prefer not to because of his anxiety and PTSD.
I'm not asking you to take one, I'm asking if you think you passed one if I asked you that same question.
I don't think I passed the next one my name.
Oh, okay.
And that's how bad my nerves are these days.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't.
it was...
I haven't even had anything to drink today, my hands are shaking.
So, his alibi doesn't hold up, and he refuses the polygraph. They press him again, this time point blank. Do you know anything about this case?
And here's the thing, Sean kind of brought it up before about truth and stuff. So when you're talking to the FBI, lying to the FBI is actually charging him with itself. So I'm asking you if you had any knowledge.
No, I had no knowledge. I had no idea what's going on. I wouldn't ask all the questions about it. So I swear I had nothing to do with it. If you had nothing to do with it.
He says, no, I answered all your questions. But this is where it gets baffling. Because after this interview in 2017, as far as the written record we have suggests, they seem to just drop it with Suchkowski. The next action the investigators take, at least, again, the next one we know about, is in 2019, when they go back to Oklahoma to confront Caleb, the other suspect we met in the last episode. Our investigation is going the direct opposite direction from the FBI's. While we try and figure out why, I'm scraping through Suchkowski's old LiveJournal posts looking for clues, trying to refine the idea of him in my head. It feels voyeuristic, like I'm reading his childhood diary. Then I come across a post that ends simply, "I could use a friend to hold me right now." And I pause. It's a weird thing, this process, digging into someone's life. So much we're hearing about Suchkowski is incredibly disturbing. But for some reason, the small, universal sadness of this particular post reminds me, with a jolt, that I'm not dealing with just a villain or a suspect or potentially a perpetrator, but a human being too. And people are complicated. They don't always fit into simple narratives or categories. Another source, a furry named Lucid, who remains in regular contact with Suchkowski today, defends him as a loyal friend. Quote, persistent, determined, certainly a jokester, cautious yet careless at times. With, quote, an aptitude for stirring the pot within the fandom. They do say he drinks heavily, and that when he's drinking it's, quote, night and day. He goes from relatively calm and collected to having a very short temper. But Lucid paints a strikingly different picture than we're getting from the others. A picture of someone who's kind to the animals in their care, for one thing. They also, though, mention 2 incidents when they lived together, one of a mysterious case of arson at Suchkowski's workplace, one of dogs in the neighborhood who were fed hot dogs with nails in them. Quote, fingers were pointed at Suchkowski for both. They both remain unsolved. But Quote, "I don't think he'd do such a thing," Lucid adds. I mentioned the animal cruelty conviction in his record and say it's hard for me to reconcile these two wildly different ideas of Robert Suchkowski. It is, quote, "a bit for me as well," they reply, acknowledging that others have very different stories to tell. But from what I've seen, they say, he's taken effort to care for his animals. These contradictions and complications only increase my desire to understand who Robert Suchkowski is. And the more I wrestle with them, the clearer it becomes that there's only so much you can understand from a distance. At some point, you have to meet a person face to face. But even though we have his name and a substantial digital trail, actually contacting Suchkowski proves almost as tricky as tracking down Cal had been. Arnav has put together a long list of potential numbers. We call them all.
So specifically, we're looking into the chlorine thing.
Hi, my name's Nicky Wolf. I'm a podcaster from the UK. Not sure if you got my last message.
Available to take your call. At the tone, please record your message.
Just text him.
Hi, just wanted to get back in touch. Sorry for the call out of the blue. My name's Nicky Wolf. So I'm Nicky Wolf. My name's Nicky. I'm a podcaster from the UK. We come up empty. But then we get a break. Our mole from back in episode 3 shares some screenshots from private groups he used to be in. There's a username for Suchkowski, a Telegram handle. I call it. It rings out like the others had. But the next day, I receive a message. It says, "Hey, Oz." I introduce myself and say that we'd love to talk to him, keeping the details vague for now. I say we're going to be travelling around the US and ask if he'd be up for sitting down and talking with us. His messages are a bit brusque, though not unfriendly. But I'm still very surprised when he agrees in principle to an interview. He lives, he says, in Portage, Wisconsin. We loosely set a date, and communication slows as we travel. I still think he's going to flake, but then I receive the text from the last episode, the one that arrives when we're in Oklahoma. That's him sending me his address. To my frank amazement, he's confirmed the interview. So, after our visit to Cal in Oklahoma is done, we fly straight to Chicago, rent a car at O'Hare, and hit the road north towards Portage, Wisconsin, about 3.5 hours away. As we get on the freeway from the airport, we pass the bulk of the Hyatt Regency Hotel and Convention Center itself. It feels like an omen. We make decent time on the road, which is good, because we need an early night. Tomorrow, we're set to meet Robert Suchkowski at 3 p.m.
Test, crispy bacon, egg, bread, coffee cake, terrorism. Don't hold.
Yeah.
I don't have a great night's sleep. I don't think any of us do.
I don't know if it's coffee, but I'm feeling fairly anxious.
It's the coffee.
I think it's just the coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, it all comes down to this. I mean, not to make you more anxious, but.
Yeah.
So, what are we doing today?
I think we should go for a late lunch. Maybe noodle around town for a little bit.
Who are we talking to today?
We're talking to each other. We're just going to hang on holiday. Today is the biggest day of reporting in this whole project. We are going over to the house of Robert Suchkowski, aka Magnus Diridian.
It's the same four of us from the Oklahoma trip. Me and producer Max, and videographers Nick and Ryan.
And we're going to tell him he's a terrorist. So that's going to be fun, and we're going to get shot, probably.
I was going to say, he's probably going to react very, very calmly.
Probably going to react with dignity. And
We're joking around to cover our nerves. Really, we haven't the faintest idea what to expect.
I want you to just give me a gut check on how it feels to be at this stage so close to potentially an answer you've been thinking about on this white whale for so long.
It's nerve-wracking. It's pretty fucking intense to be out here. It's weird. This has been such a journey. And like, if today goes well, potentially we have an answer to a question I've been asking for 10 years.
At the same time, we're gaming out the interview, trying to think through every possible eventuality. Even if it all goes perfectly smooth, this is still going to be a super complicated conversation. As with Caleb, we're obviously not expecting a confession, but we want to give him the space to maybe let slip something that could imply guilt or innocence. Our best chance of that comes from what we know from his MFF roommate who spoke to us. But we also need to protect our source.
So maybe we don't go, the FBI, like your roommates didn't substantiate your alibi. We get him to say it.
Right.
We also want to give him room to open up emotionally, get a sense of who he is as a person, get him to let his guard down. On top of everything else, we also have to take care not to provoke him. Not just because we want him to keep talking, but much more importantly, because we don't know what he might do if he feels attacked.
Well, no, I mean, look, the reality is this guy has a reputation for being, I guess the polite way of putting it is unstable.
Yeah. Vengeful. It's how people have.
Right. I mean, and so I think the slow approach is the best approach.
We're uncomfortably aware that there's a chance this guy could be dangerous. We can't afford to be too confrontational.
We've spoken to old friends of his who've told us some pretty disturbing stuff. Yeah. Like really disturbing stuff in some cases.
Even the FBI investigators were warned by the Behavioral Analysis Unit to be cautious with him. And we're about to be on his property, inside his house, asking some very difficult questions.
We need to be careful, you know, given his
literally in a safety.
Correct. I mean, even doing this, there's an element of danger in what we're doing. Yeah. I think more so than anything.
One thing we do is set a pre-agreed ripcord phrase.
Just like a safe word for if anyone feels like they want to leave, then we leave. There's no like vote. It's just like.
How about I'm getting a call?
Wow.
We land on the plausible, I've got to go get something from the car, that we agree will be our cue to get the hell out of there, no questions asked.
So if anybody feels like they want to leave, I just got to check something from the car. Is there, like, there's not like a discussion that's like, we're going to the car to leave. Cool. Yeah.
Unless you actually have to get something from the car. And you say, no, you guys can stay here.
Right, yeah.
And hand numbers. I think it's this white one on the corner.
No, it's this
one. Yeah. Oh yeah, I recognise it from the video.
Sichkowski Street is pleasant, nondescript, suburban. I check the door numbers looking for the right one.
All right. Here goes nothing.
For a few seconds, the world around me seems to freeze. Like hang time, the moment of weightlessness at the apex of a parabola. And then the door opens.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm Nicky. How you doing?
Fur Loathing is a production of Brazen. You can follow the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on new episodes. And follow more of Brazen's award-winning work at brazen.fm. And don't forget to leave us a review, it really does help. Fur Loathing was produced by Goat Rodeo. The show was written and reported by me, Nicky Wolf, with Max Johnston, Ian Enright, Lucy Woods, and Arnav Binaikia. From Goat Rodeo, lead producer is Ian Enright. Reporting, production and story editing from Max Johnston. Additional field reporting from Cara Schillen. Voice acting by Hannah Morrish, Sam Wolfe and Katie Sherrard. From Project Brazen, senior producer is Nicholas Brennan. Executive producers are Bradley Hope and Tom Wright. Managing producer is Lucy Woods. Associate producing by Arnav Binaikia. Mariangel Gonzalez is our project manager, and Megan Dean is programming manager. Original score by the fabulous Breakmaster Cylinder. Additional music from Ian Enright, Max Johnston, and Blue Dot Sessions. Additional editorial and production assistance at Goat Rodeo from Cara Schillen, Rebecca Seidel, Isabel Kirby McGowan, Jay Venables, and Megan Nadolski. Additional editorial and production at Project Brazen from Andrea Klarich, Clara Preve, Maddie Forster, and Charlie Barlow. Ryan Ho is series creative director. Cover art by Julian Pradier. Series cinematography by Emmett Brennan and Ryan DeFranco. Special thanks to David Waters. This show couldn't have happened without the involvement and support of the furry fandom. Special thanks to those who shared their stories with us, including Pacho Fur, Atmos Deer, Toa Cat, Ziegler Jaguar, Uncle Kage, and Shy Matzi.